Music. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Good to see you guys again. Some of you know us, some of us you don't, some of you don't.
So we on this today for anybody who's tuning in. We were trying to, I guess, answer a question. A lot of people, we're on Facebook all the time and on social media. So you hear questions about usually the elected officials don't do anything, they don't do anything. So my question was, why don't we do anything? I got a lot of people complaining about their union support and backing people for elected office, and they say that our local is supporting this candidate, but then the members usually say, like, well, when did we decide we were going to do? We were going to decide we were going to do that.
And prior to this broadcast, and I reached out to a lot of the other unions on Facebook, and I reached out to the administrators, and they said that they had either picked because of who the top guys said. Some of them said they had picked democratically. Some of them were unaware. So it was kind of, a mixed bag of this, that, and the other thing. So, I mean, it's good to know that people are thinking about it, but I think hopefully through more of this, we can get the word out there.
So this is the question we pose to ourselves. Does the union rank and file without the leadership have the actual power to put somebody in and out of office? Now, especially like what's happening here with the candidate for public advocate, because there's going to be such a small turnout with a large amount of union members that we have. If we just get enough people along just the Facebook groups to actually go out and vote, we can actually choose tonight who gets put in or out of office tomorrow for public advocate. Now, a lot of people were saying this doesn't matter. The public advocate office doesn't hold that much power. But if we can show that we can put someone in or out of office, we can easily put legislation in place the same way to increase the powers of public advocate office. But people have to see that we're able to do it. So regardless, and this was a perfect opportunity because there wasn't that many unions that actually backed the candidate because the special election is so small, it's going to have to run again, so it wasn't really looked at that hard. And we can have a major impact just from a small little broadcast like this to show, okay, we want this person, we want to look at what they have to say, and we're going to put somebody directly into office.
I think also this is a good starting off point. Today it's public advocate, tomorrow maybe it's it's someone in charge of a district, and before you know it, you get a borough president. Before you know it, you're a major force, and these things always pick up steam. Once they see you can do one, then you can do another, and before you know it, people have to start coming to you for your agenda to see, hey, listen, I got to go through these guys to get where I want to go.
Yeah, we're getting pretty tired of the local unions, elected officials having to pay help with campaign donations to these elected officials, and we don't see anything in return. When we actually, our vote is more important. If we all vote in one block for these candidates, they actually have to make sure, and we want to take it outside of national politics and keep it local. One thing we want to make sure is when it comes to work, labor laws, labor rights, that gets front and foremost. You have to make sure that's the main thing you fight for, and everything else comes after.
Listen, everyone votes with their pocketbook. I don't care, where you come from or how you do it. If you need work, you want to get paid the best you can. We're all union guys. We want to make sure as much of the work can stay union as possible. So if they know that they have to deal with a union contingency, and listen, between all the trades, a lot of us live in the 5 boroughs. So this is something we can definitely do. I'm sure I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but we could definitely affect a race like this. And then, once they see this and people say, hey, those guys put that guy in, we could start building something, because then they have elections, 2020, 2022, these things start coming really, really fast.
So, my name is Idanis Rodriguez, a community activist for the last 40 years, 13 of those being a teacher and also being a council member for the last 10 years. It is an honor for me to be running today to be the public advocate. I'm ready to be the person that will make all city agencies accountable to provide the services and the respect to all New Yorkers, and also to be sure that all private sector who do business with the city will be accountable to and provide good contracts.
My name is Benji. I run for public advocate, and I don't come to this race as a career politician or career elected official. I come with a background in civic technology and in education. For my entire professional career, I have been working to improve how the government operates and how people interact with their democracy. And in the last 2 years, I've been teaching coding and civics to improve how the minds of our young children work as well. Now, I am the product of two families that were also looking to improve things. My father's family came here from China and settled in Boston, where he was born. And my mother's family came here from Poland after World War II. She's an immigrant, born a refugee. Her parents were Jews who had survived the Holocaust, and they came here looking for a more tolerant place to raise their children. Now, my parents were given incredible opportunities in this country. My father became a civil engineer, public served his entire career. My mom, I say she grew up to be a professional, amazing person. She moved here when she was 8, didn't speak a word of English, grew up to be an extremely successful lawyer and litigator, and was brought into one of New York's largest law firms to found their intellectual property division. And when she decided that they were sexist because they wouldn't make women partners, she left and took 2 of their top women attorneys with her to found her own law firm. I know, right? And now, I find my parents' stories to be inspirational, but it's inspirational to me in another way as well. They were married in 1977. Only 10 years before that, an interracial marriage like theirs would have been illegal in over half of this country. But they didn't let where they came from or what other people thought get in their way. They got engaged, they fought for civil rights, they fought against wars, and they moved to New York and they thrived. This is where my brother and I were born. And we were both given tremendous opportunities as well. We both went to public school. I graduated from Bronx Science. And in the end, the lessons that I take from my family's history are the ones that drive me. Chief among them, everyone is created equal. Everyone deserves the opportunity to live up to their potential, and everyone has a place in our democracy. And for the last 10 years, I've lived those lessons. I got involved on the Obama campaign in 2008. And ever since then, I've been engaged actively in organizing and bringing people into the political process. Instead of going to Washington and working for the administration, my friend convinced me to stay here in New York. And I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people work to break down the barriers between politics, government, and the residents of New York.
In other news. All right, so the easiest way to get this done to finish out the interview, we asked the public advocate candidates questions that was coming directly from union members, and we got their answers put together in a video. So what we're going to do is just ask the questions, and you're going to listen to the public advocates answer each question after we play the video out straight. So,
first question we asked is, most important thing you think needs to happen to protect or improve the standard of living for working men and women in the city?
All right.
To take our city to be the leading one in the whole nation when it comes to provide good paid training jobs to New Yorkers, and to realize and recognize that we have not provided the same opportunity to people from different ethnic background in our city. That when we look at the lack of pipeline that our children are dealing with, it goes to a problem that we have where the opportunity for our children and our youngsters are decided mainly by the zip code where they are born and raised. So I will work as a public advocate to be sure that every single individual get the opportunity not only to get a good quality education, but also to get good paid job and union jobs in our city.
Well, I'd say the biggest thing is we have an affordability crisis, but what the public advocate can realistically do about that, obviously, has to do with city policy, and that really comes down to land use, because so much of it is tied to the cost of rent in this city. And so ultimately, what I'm proposing as public advocate is 3 concrete programs: Civics for All, Power for Communities, and Justice for New Yorkers, which break down the barriers between residents of New York and their politics, government, and bureaucracy, so that they can have a voice in city decision making. And at the end of the day, New Yorkers understand that we're facing challenges, and that one of those challenges is the lack of affordability, which comes down to a lack of affordable housing. And we know that we need to build more housing, and we need better rent stabilization laws. For both of those, you need political will, and you need the capacity for New Yorkers to come together and agree on a plan. Right now, we have zoning, but we don't have planning, and they're not the same thing. And the mayor just plops down whatever he wants, wherever he wants. And up zoning here, mega towers over there, and communities are furious. But as a result, we also have no consensus on how to build more units and how to keep them affordable. the three pillars: civics for all, power for communities, and justice for New Yorkers. And in this particular case, power for communities is designed to bring together stakeholders from communities to develop a bottom-up city plan that cuts across community boundaries. And the reason for this is we're going to accomplish two things by doing that. One, we're going to build a time frame and build a process that enables us to incorporate new ideas and new voices. And two, it's going to allow communities to build leverage for that plan over the mayor and over City Hall, because no mayor wants to upset every community at once. And even if they did, they didn't care for some strange reason. No ambitious city council member. They all want to move up the food chain. They're looking for more constituents, not fewer. When you have a shared vision, you build political leverage.
So the most important thing that I think that needs to happen to protect or improve the standard of living for working men and women in our city is, I think, twofold. One, of course, we need to have elected officials and a public advocate that's going to stand by unions, especially when you have corporations or companies and employers that are not allowing their workers to unionize or not negotiating in good faith for a good contract that's going to ensure a good paying wage and benefits. I also believe that we have to look at the affordability crisis here in our city. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep rents affordable, to strengthen rent protections in Albany, advocate across the board to make sure that New Yorkers are able to afford the rent, but also be able to stay in their apartments when it comes time to renew.
All right. Then we asked them, when monopolies abuse the privileges they were given by elected officials of the city, who should be responsible for enforcing penalties on those companies? Here's what they had to say.
On those companies.
Look, we as a city have to be sure that we put all the pressure on enforcement. I believe that anyone that come and do business with the city, they should be accountable to provide job and workers protection, to respect the contracts, and to understand that when they come to the city and ask and respond to any RFP, they need to know that the city are expecting anybody else that get benefit from the city comply with all the protection to our workers. And I feel that it is a responsibility from the public advocate to the city council, the mayor, and all entity from government to be sure that workers know that we are supporting them and that we are here to make all the private sector accountable for the commitment that they already have made with our city.
One of the biggest monopolies we have here, or really a duopoly, is the cable companies, which the city signed a terrible contract with them years and years ago in exchange for providing high-speed internet to the city, which never happened. It's a complete sham, and there's been zero accountability. And ultimately, it is up to the elected officials to terminate that contract. I think, honestly, there's a breach of contract there. There should be a lawsuit, and that the companies should lose their duopoly, and that concessions should be extracted from them, money should be extracted from them, for the city to provide free high-speed internet to everybody through the Link NYC program. So ultimately, as public advocate, it's your job to work with folks like the controller and the city council and the mayor to find first where these issues are, and then to go after them in court. And also, again, it comes down to political will, because while the court system can be used to great effect, ultimately, you're going to get another bad contract if sweetheart deals keep being perpetuated. And you need to do the civics for all piece to make sure that people understand how the city thinks about these issues and how badly it's doing.
When monopolies abuse the privileges that they were given, I do believe that it's the job of the city, whether it be the Attorney General, whether it be the mayor's office, the governor's office, they should do everything to pull licenses, find these companies, and making sure that they're no longer able to do business in our city and state. There are a lot of companies that we can name, specifically like Spectrum, who have historically shown that they're not providing the customers with the services they need, but also have done everything they can to work against the unionization or a good contract of their workers. So companies like that should be held accountable.
The third question we asked them What is your opinion of the open shop work taking place at Hudson Yards? How would you go about solving that problem?
Yeah, the related side there, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Look, I believe that we need to be sure that when any agreement are made, those agreements are respected. And we know that when big projects take place, there's a lot of negotiation that involve the private sector, unions, and subcontractors. So I hope that with all the work going on in the rail yard, it will focus on maintaining protection to those workers that are union workers. And also, if they have been anyone doing any job that go outside protecting workers' rights, we need to make them accountable.
Doing.
Okay.
So definitely a problem. And again, it takes the organizing and political will to ensure that our unions are protected and that the right of workers to organize is something which is a part of New York City life. And so the Power for Communities model is the most important piece here, because what it's going to do is enable communities and stakeholders like unions, like workers, to come to the table and build a vision for New York and have that leverage over City Hall. Because ultimately, one, these issues are all interrelated, and two, when communities like workers try to fight on their own, they oftentimes don't have the will and the agreement of all the folks that they need to ensure that their issues get addressed. So it's not that unions aren't strong, they are strong. But think about how much stronger they'd be with consensus from the community, because we know what happens when you have people working together. Unions are labor working together, have a lot of power. And if they had even more strength from the community, because you had programs that brought other people into that process that weren't union members but believed the same thing and wanted New York to be affordable and wanted workers to be strong and protected, then you would really have movement from the city council and even from the state legislature, because ultimately New York City makes up half of the state legislature, which controls so many of these laws, and the state would have to be responsive as well, which it typically hasn't been.
I am against the open shop work happening on Hudson Yards. What we know is that these are developers and buildings being built for mostly luxury when they're receiving subsidies from the state and the city. And I believe that any development that receives subsidies should hire a union, should be paying a prevailing wage. And open shop, I think, circumvents all of that, and it's a big giveaway for developers. We have to put pressure on the governor. As public advocate, I'll put that pressure across the board on all levels of government to make sure that we require for the developments to pay a prevailing wage.
Okay, so then we asked if they could name any particular legislation, law, bill that they passed, a stance that they took in support of labor rights. We need to know that they did more than just show up at a picket line. So here was the answers to that.
Labor rights.
There has not been one bill at the council that they have passed in the last 10 years related to protecting workers' rights that my name is not affiliated with.
Okay. That's a good answer. All right.
I've not been in the legislature, so I haven't voted on or passed a particular bill, but I supported the Employee Free Choice Act when Barack Obama was running, and but I didn't work in the administration. I got involved in local politics after that.
My entire career, I've been a supporter of labor. I come from a union household. My mom was a 1199 worker, and when even looking back at my first year in office, I actually was the first Democratic elected official to take on the mayor on an issue that was going to do away with 300 jobs against the Teamsters, and that was the horse carriage industry. As the chair of the Consumer Affairs Committee, when that conversation came up, I went on the steps of City Hall, got the press involved, and put pressure and said that bill would not pass through my committee. We were successful because of that. The horse carriage industry still continues to be in Central Park, and luckily I was able to get the endorsement of the Teamsters. I most recently introduced another bill to help building workers when it comes to getting prevailing wage jobs in these neighborhood rezonings that are happening across the city. My bill would require any development that receives tax subsidies to include prevailing wages for building workers. So I do have a long track record of helping unions. I think also one that I forgot to mention was helping with the Spectrum workers. I actually used my own campaign funds to create a website called FixMyCableNow.com, and with that website, I've been collecting data from consumers complaining about their cable providers. But that website and that act alone has really put pressure on these companies to do right by their workers. But I hope to take that data and release a larger report and calling out the gap in services that they.
Another question we asked them was, Spectrum Cable recently settled a lawsuit for $174 million when the actual cost and loss to the city was much greater. What can we do to ensure that when companies mistreat the citizens of our state, that they are not allowed to benefit from their wrongdoings? This is what they said.
We need to build people powers. We need to be workers' powers. We need to understand that the city of New York is a city where still we have 40% of New Yorkers living in poverty. We need to understand that laborers also have to come together. And as we need to build a coalition, this is about when can we just think about one agenda for all? Because sometimes when we live an institutional sector to use the divide and conquer, it doesn't only affect all the city abroad, it affects also laborers as a coalition. And I think that it is important that when one sector of labor is on the attack, all labor should come together with religions, with grassroots organizers, because there should not be any window, there should not be any space for someone to move out of any agreements. And when there's any decision, any settlement that happens, those who have signed that agreement, that settlement, they should not have any window to lift that agreement. So I feel that what we need to do is to be sure that from the public advocate, we use the level of advocating for workers, the level of the leverage that we had to advocate for working class and middle class to be used to be sure that we play that role of being the watchdog, so following the settlement and the agreement, and to make in this case is a spectrum. But in the future can be any corporation that they do any settlement and then they try to run away from that agreement.
It comes down again to the political leverage that communities have, because we can see here a situation where just using the law didn't work out so well, because the Attorney General is allowed to settle. And so when you bring suit, if you don't follow it to fruition, you can have outcomes which don't really benefit communities and don't really penalize corporations. And you do that for a variety of reasons, but at the end of the day, if we want things to be different, it needs to be more than just lawsuits. It needs to be the political will to follow through with cases and laws that are strong enough so that if the Attorney General does sue, that they have a chance at winning when things go wrong. And therefore, there are the programs that I propose, Civics for All, Power to Communities, Justice for New Yorkers, are about ensuring, one, that the residents of New York understand how the system works, have access to the political system and the governmental system, and how to build their own power and what their rights are in the system. If they're unhappy with that, then we have Power for Communities to bring them together, to bring the stakeholders into the room,
15,
to work together to change how the city and the state operate.
All right, great.
I believe that Spectrum Cable should have paid a lot more money when they recently settled the lawsuit. They had a clear track record of providing inadequate services, to not meeting the standards of their contracts, and I do believe that when that happens, not only should we sue, but we should also pull their license or their contract with the city and state of New York. So moving on, when the city is looking to renew their licenses, I would be a vocal opponent to Spectrum being allowed to stay in New York City. And
asked them what was the first act of civil engagement that they had during their careers.
This is how they answered.
Civic involvement.
Back in my island of the Dominican Republic, I am the only candidate for public advocate, born and raised in another country. I am the only candidate in this race that has 40 years without a stop fighting for social justice. So when I came here, I did not only come with my luggage coming from the Caribbean, I also came with a lot of experience working back there for workers' rights. So when I came here in 1983, since 83 to today, there has not been any picket line of supporting workers' rights. It can call it the fast food workers in the Domino Pizza. It can be the workers at the LaGuardia or the Kennedy airports. It can be any fight in the 80s, in the 90s that has not been present of. So for me, I can celebrate that I've been part of the movement that we organized against the apartheid for the freedom of Nelson Mandela. I've been the person that's been involved in all this in all solidarity movement in the 1980s, a movement that played a role also behind workers, behind students. I co-lead the movement when we took over City College in 1989 and 1991. So, and that movement was able to be successful after we persuaded Mario Cuomo not to increase tuition and cut the budget, because we built a coalition with laborers, with religion leaders. When I joined the Occupy movement and I was recognized as the Protester of the Year by the Time magazine, that recognition was not given only to me because I've been in this movement for the last few years. I've been part of the social justice movement from the 1980 to today.
Okay, thank you.
The very first action I took myself, when I was in kindergarten, my teacher was a big environmentalist and made us read a book, 50 Ways to Save the Planet. And I basically tried to convince my family to stop flushing the toilet every day. But that was probably it. That or making my parents quit smoking.
Okay. My first civic involvement that I can remember was actually very young. My mom was an 1199 member, so I would spend time with her campaigning, whether it be for a political office or a cause that the union was taking on. For example, contract negotiations. I was young. I was 10 years old. I never thought I'd be in politics, but I remember vividly the importance of those actions and being there and doing that. It wasn't until my early 20s where I got re-involved because of learning the impact of local government in our communities and how it plays into the whole ecosystem of labor, housing, overall quality of life issues. That's when I started really getting involved. So about 23 years old, I got back into the conversation.
Another question we asked them, you're able to get one infrastructure project completed in New York City. What would it be and how would you fund it? This is what they told us.
And how would you fund it?
MTA. The MTA had to be fixed. And I chair the Committee of Transportation. In order to fix the MTA, we need to be sure that all the engineers that they are represented by DC 37 are protected. We need to be sure that all the workers that they are represented by the TW, they are also respected. We need to be sure that the resources that we bring to the MTA should be used only for maintenance and repair. And the MTA board, they need to open the book. We need to do a forensic audit in order to be sure that every single dollar is spent by the MTA only for maintenance and repair, and that we cut the budget and we do project on time.
Okay, so the way to fund it would be the audit?
The way to fund it should be congestion price. The way to fund it should be the millionary taxes combining with the ID plan, Scott Stringer plan. All those four ideas together can raise $27 billion in the next 10 years so that the MTA will have all the resources that they need. At the same time, the leadership of the MTA should be made accountable to bring more transparency on how they use those resources. We need to reorganize the board, the MTA, to be sure that there's representation for the city council, from the public advocate, for the controller, and also more representation from riders sitting at the board of the MTA.
Okay.
Oh man, that's a really tough one. That's between two things. No, it's got to be night shift.
Okay.
People are being poisoned by lead, and that is just an egregious humanitarian disaster. The other big one I was thinking of was the MTA, which obviously an economic detriment to the people of New York as it continues to fail. But NYCHA is just a hell, it's ruining lives. And it's just got to be fixed. It's criminal what's going on over there. And to fund it, this is the big question because it's $35 billion in arrears. But ultimately, what I would do is I'd go to those communities, is what I plan to do, to bring those stakeholders together, as is the way that I think about all problems, to come up with a solution that involves them. Now, I know the city and the federal government and the state have proposed this RAD program, which is basically a privatization of NYCHA land and the privatization of the maintenance, take it off the city books. And ultimately, that is, so are you familiar with the RAD program?
Oh, no, I'm not.
Okay. So essentially, the city wants to do two things. One is to privatize the maintenance, which will theoretically bring down costs, and then to take
20 seconds.
Unused land and privatize it and give it to developers in exchange for money. Now, ultimately, those are programs that could work. The big problem is that the government is coming in and telling NYCHA tenants who will maintain their properties with no accountability and who will build on their land with no accountability. Lots of co-ops, lease land to defray their maintenance costs and have money for the co-op community. And I think that is a reasonable model. But the co-op community should be the one deciding on who's in charge of the maintenance, because that is where you get accountability, not from the mayor telling you. And two, they need to be able to decide whether or not to lease their own land and what partners should come in to do any development, because they should be partners with that community, not with the government.
Okay.
One infrastructure project that I would like to see completed in New York City, which I think is highly important, is NYCHA. There's no reason why residents of public housing should be living without heat and hot water. There's no reason why there should be children being poisoned by lead. I think that the city and the state and the federal government have not made the investments needed over the past few decades, which has gotten us to where we are today. And what these tenants are experiencing is criminal. We have to do everything to make sure that we're funding NYCHA properly. I have a plan to do that, and that's taxing Wall Street. Every single year, $11 billion of taxes that Wall Street pays to New York is returned 100% by the state of New York. We have to recoup some of that money and make sure we're using it to fix NYCHA.
The city, we asked them, the city recently implemented a $15 an hour minimum wage. Do you ever see us moving to a living wage? How would you fund it without hurting small business? They replied.
Small businesses.
We need to be sure that, as we have been discussing, and $3 billion were offered to Amazon to come to New York City, which is not new, because we also gave billions and billions of dollars to Disney to come to Times Square. No similar investment has been made in the underserved communities in the South Bronx, in Uptown Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, or Staten Island. So now Amazon is the new news. But how we have built Midtown Manhattan, Long Island City, and Brooklyn without investing in the outside community. Why are we offering $185 million for the private sector that create jobs, and all those jobs are only located in the Midtown area? We need to double that amount of money for the private sector that builds jobs in the outside area of the Midtown. So I feel that we have that big responsibility to bring incentive, but not only for the big corporation, but to the small businesses. I'm the co-prime, I'm the lead prime of the Small Business Job Survival Act, a bill that for the first time will give the right and fairness to local small business when they renew the lease. When I supported the inward rezoning, I wanted to be sure and to get what I did, which was to include a piece in the agreement that say that when a private developer builds commercial space with public dollars, a percentage of that commercial space should be affordable to local small businesses.
Okay.
I absolutely see us moving towards a full living wage that's tied to inflation. And the way to move towards it is, one, with increments. That's how you do things and test and make sure that things are hurting, aren't having unintended knock-on effects. But most importantly, studies show that small businesses aren't severely damaged by minimum wage increases. Now, we've never done a minimum wage increase as large as what would be a living wage, which is why I think the increments are important to make sure that, we're not having unintended effects. But all of the minimum wage studies demonstrate that small businesses don't go out of business just because you increase the wage. And what I would furthermore say is that the small businesses are going out of business right now because of the high rents on property, because we don't have reasonable commercial rent rules, and landlords are taking advantage of our commercial tenants. So
15.
we improve our stock of commercial space as well as residential space and improve the rights of tenants, then the cost that would be going towards increased rent can go towards improved wages.
Okay. So next up, we asked them, what do you think the Janus decision has done to the city of New York and organized labor moving forward? This was their response to that.
I think it's a disaster. And I think that this is something that, unfortunately, we need to fight back. We need to be sure that we don't take away the powers of unions to be able to collect the membership fee, and to be sure that with those resources, they are able to not only protect the workers, but also to protect the progressive agenda for the city of New York. I've been there with the whole labor movement coalition when I saw the movement fighting in the 80s and the 90s for immigration reforms. I have seen the labor put in the resources to support the student movement when we took over in 89 and 91. So the fee that is collected by the union from the membership has been used to protect the workers not only when they work directly with the laborers, but also to protect those communities where those workers live. That is mainly communities who are in underserved communities.
Okay.
Bad decision, but ultimately, what it will hopefully do is convince or compel organized labor to do more organizing. At the end of the day, we can still have strong unions if we have local governments and local stakeholders that are engaged in organizing workers. And that is something that I believe strongly in. I do civic workshops. I've been doing civic workshops for over 2 years now, trained over 4,000 people, and a lot of those people have been folks in unions. And when I go to unions, I talk about the importance of being in a union. I talk to them about the value of participating in the union's political struggle and participating in their internal union democracy. And this is something we really need to impress upon folks, and that is why Civics for All is so important. Because ultimately, whether people join unions now is up to them, and we need to make it very clear that organization is powerful, organization is valuable, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, regardless of what's going on in Washington.
15.
Being part of something gives you the capacity to achieve change where you live.
The Janus decision was a clear hit to labor unions, and I am adamantly opposed to it. And as public advocate, I will be a large voice pushing back against that decision. It affects organized labor for many reasons. Most importantly, just cutting funding to not allow for the unions to have the support they need, but to be able to continue organizing, continue to provide their members benefits. It's something that, hopefully we can reverse. And again, I will stand by unions in that fight, always moving forward.
We also asked him, do you think the major companies that are providing tax breaks and subsidies, whether public or private, should be made to pay a prevailing wage? These were their thoughts.
To pay prevailing wage.
They should, all of them should.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
I believe that any major company that receives tax breaks or subsidies should be made to pay prevailing wages. I was one of the only candidates in this race that did not sign the letter to allow Amazon to come into our city because I was aware of the labor practices that they've had in Seattle and across the country. I also carry a bill that ensures that any development that gets public subsidies pays prevailing wage to the building workers. I think that our tax dollars should be used to benefit New Yorkers, and you know, paying a lot. And if we do not push for prevailing wage, what we will see is these companies and these developers pretty much suck dry our resources and benefit and capitalize on below wage standards.
All right, so then we asked them, do you support the striking workers of Spectrum's public option to make cable service owned by the people of New York City to increase revenue that could be used directly towards the city? This is what they had to say about that proposal.
Ownership of the cable system.
No, I need to know more details. I've been a partner with this fight with the workers and the local that represent the workers. I believe that it is our responsibility not only to protect the workers now, but also to be sure that we create more jobs when it comes to communication. Those are the good paid jobs that mainly our youngsters can show the opportunity to be part of this pipeline. I think that it is unfair. It's unacceptable that a big corporation that is making all this money are not being able to protect and to honor an agreement or continue negotiation to sign a good deal between workers, the workers of communication and Spectrum. So I need to get more details, but for me, I will be a partner in the fight, not only to be in the picket line, but also to be part of supporting any initiatives that is good for you and for the whole city.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to see the details on something like that, especially since when you say revenues come back to the city, it can oftentimes mean that there's a boondoggle later on when somebody tries to use that money for something it's not intended for, such as with the MTA. And we've had the stealing of that dedicated fund for decades, which has led to crumbling infrastructure. So we want to make sure that the laws are written well and that there's a dedicated fund and that there's good management. But at the end of the day, high-speed internet has become something of a utility, and utilities need to be highly regulated so that everybody has access to them and that service is available to all.
I believe that Spectrum workers should have an opportunity for a public option to make cable service owned by them and people of New York City. I think it's a great way to promote economic democracy. It's a great way to keep our city's money within the 5 boroughs and make sure that we're actually building wealth within families, within New Yorkers, and within our city. The continued giveaway of our dollars to these major corporations do not benefit, I believe, the overall ecosystem of our cities.
Another thing we probe their minds about, do you see the problem with the distribution of the money allocated for public schools through the Campaign for Fiscal Equity as an issue that should be taken on by the public advocate?
Here's what they asked. Here's what they said.
We need to be sure that we bring every single dollar that the state is supposed to release to our city. And I'm the only candidate for public advocate that has been a co-founder or to a school. I am the only candidate in this race that has been a teacher for 13 years before being elected to office. I know what it is to see how New York City has the most segregated educational system in New York City. It is a different story when someone say, my grandfather went to this public school, my father went to, I went to, and we talk about 4 generational professional. That's a school that the PTA raised $1 million. It's not the same PTA or the school in the underserved community that the PTA only can raise $1,000, $2,000 a year. So we have to recognize that as we march together with many brothers and sisters in New York City, there's a reality that we have not addressed, which is we have the most segregated educational system. And sometimes that, unfortunately, many of our brothers, when we fight together, they don't like to share that privilege. Because most of the school that we have, which are the best one, in the middle school and the high school, they are only located and serve mainly children for family who they are the more wealthy New Yorkers or the upper middle class who are located in particular zip code. We don't have in New York City a plan to be sure that every single child in New York City get the same quality education. In 2019, a children's circle decide the quality of education where the children are born and raised.
Yes, because it's led to New York having the most segregated school system in the country, which is an absolute disgrace. And ultimately, the big question is, how can you achieve the political will to get the money from Albany, because they've been refusing for years and years to provide the money, and they have and how to desegregate the system here in New York City. And for me, again, the Power for Communities model is there to bring together those stakeholders. In this case, folks like the Community Education Council, the PTAs, the PAs, to talk about this problem. Because when we talk about this problem, folks are going to realize that there is tremendous disparity between the funding of schools. And this is something that we talk about, but folks don't know the extent of it. Principals don't know the extent of it. For example, there are schools receiving 124% of the city's metric of full funding, and most schools are all the way down at 87%. And that's just this budget. In the last budget, they were down at 82, 84%.
20.
This is egregious. And so when we have folks come together to talk about these disparities and the challenges facing our school system, we'll have folks talking about how we can more equitably divide up resources. Because at the end of the day, the mayor is proposing political solutions, not systemic solutions.
Our city's economy. The number one job of the public advocate is to advocate for those who are not being heard, who do not have a voice, who are not receiving the services they need and deserve. And the Campaign for Fiscal Equity is one of those fights that I believe should be in the forefront of the public advocate's agenda for many reasons. Billions of dollars that has been needed in our city has been held up in Albany, and we have to have someone who's going to be a loud voice against the governor. Two, that funding is to make sure that every single school has the adequate resources to give our children the education they need and deserve. So it's a no-brainer. As public advocate, I'll do everything I can to push back against the state and make sure that we get that funding that's properly due to our students.
Okay, and lastly, we asked them, what's the main thing that you want our members to remember about you? And here's what they told us.
I'd like to say thank you to the opportunity that the workers of communication provide me to connect with the members and the rest of the ally in the labor movement. I have been in the front line when it comes to supporting any movement fighting for workers' rights. I came here to wash dishes at West 4th and 6th Avenue or Henry Restaurant. I have worked in factories. I used to be a taxi driver. I've been living in an apartment, living together in one bedroom together with my other 4 brothers and sisters. Fighting together, organizing together. I have learned from many great leaders in the city of New York that we have a responsibility to stand for those people that are the white people that they don't have any respect. To elect someone that is prepared, someone that has 40 years fighting for workers' rights, someone that has been a teacher, someone that has been a legislator for the last 10 years, but also the only one who is an immigrant, born and raised in another country that doesn't belong to the United States. And someone that understands that we live in a society where we need to build bridges together. That in 1994, I was organizing to get the Navy out of Vieques and to support the movement for the independence of Namibia. That I was there fighting for the new tribe to Mumia Bushman. That I've been fighting when it comes to support the movement against police brutality. So I feel that I have anything that is required to have a public advocate that will stand up for workers' rights, for the working class. At the same time, I am the only one that is part of the 38% New Yorkers born and raised in another country that doesn't belong to the United States, who not only has compassion for the recent immigrants, but I am the immigrant.
I've been fighting and organizing for the last 10 years, but not as somebody looking to run for elected office, as somebody who cares about New York and about good government and fighting corruption and making sure that people are empowered. If I wanted to run for office, and that was the thing I wanted to do with my life, I could have done that 5, 6 years ago. I'm running for public advocate because I have a unique vision for what the public advocate can be, which is an office which empowers New Yorkers and breaks down the barriers between politics, government, and bureaucracy and the people of our city. In the last 2 years, I've trained over 4,000 people in how to engage in government and politics. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them have gone on to take a next step, to join a county committee, to join a community board, to join a night attendant association. And they have built change in their communities. A lot of the folks who were out there organizing against Amazon were people who had come up through these civic workshops that I've been teaching. That's why I have the endorsement of One Queens Indivisible. That's why there are organizers all over Queens who are supporting my run for public advocate. It is the job of the public advocate, which is not the mayor and doesn't have executive power, which is not the city council and can't pass legislation. It is the job of the public advocate to ensure that the people of New York recognize their own power. The public advocate's office shouldn't be about the public advocate, it should be about public advocacy. And that means making people, encouraging people and providing people the tools they need to engage and effectively fight for change with the public advocate. Use the resources of the office as a resource for the people. And that is what I propose to bring to the public advocate's office with the 3 programs that I'm proposing, which are not platitudes. They are serious policy ideas. I obviously don't have time to go into all of them right now, so folks can check out the details at benjaminyee.com/platform.
All right.
Students. As a born and raised New Yorker, I am concerned about the direction our city is headed. We are a city that's being driven by crisis and not bold ideas. The reason that the MTA is falling apart, the reason that NYCHA is falling apart, the reason that it's become highly expensive to be in our city, the reason that we continue to see corporations benefit with our tax dollars is because government has really not stepped up and pushed back against using the same old playbook to deal with the same old problems. What we're seeing is getting the same old results. Public advocate position is a real opportunity to change that. As a council member, I have been someone who led with bold ideas, forward thinking. How do we make the city better for everyone, inclusive for everyone? How do we make it livable for everyone? As I mentioned earlier in this interview, I used my own campaign funding to start a campaign against the cable companies that have been taking advantage of our New Yorkers and their workers. So we have to find someone who can think outside the box, to put pressure and make things happen. I believe that I have that experience, and I'll continue using that experience as public advocate to advocate for everyone in all 5 boroughs.
So we reached out to the public advocates because they do debates on the screen, and most of the working men and women don't really care about most of the things that they ask for. Well, I say most of it, but our main concern is what's going to happen with us and work going forward in the city. Those are questions that we usually don't get to ask as rank and file members. So I reached out to them and started letting them know we wanted to have a discussion, picked up some questions. I put it out there on the social media sites. What questions would you want to ask the elected official and have them answered if they had to answer directly to us? So they started responding, and we set up this debate. Because it was so quickly, we tried to get a debate to get each candidate to sit down. Too much time for that. So we turned it into where we had an interview with them on streams like this. And then we put those together in order to try to bring them to you now so you can hear some of the answers for some of these candidates. So I'll give you a quick rundown of who we actually reached out to. So reached out to Melissa Margarito's office. From her office, we didn't get a response. We reached out to Michael Blake's office. We did have conversation back and forth with them trying to get it locked down, but when it came down to it, it went dark yesterday where I wasn't able to get back a response to get to him in time. Reached out to Don Small's office. We didn't get a response from their office. We reached out to Eric Ulrich's office, who did respond and say that they weren't available. Even though they say they weren't available before I gave them the times we wanted to reach them, but that's when we were doing the big debate. But when we condensed it down to just a video interview, we were able to get a response. So Giannis Rodriguez, we did reach out to, and we were able to interview him. We reached out to Umani Williams' office. We got a contact back from them. It was a little later, and then we tried to go back and forth with them trying to get into the interview, but we weren't able to get that in time, and then it went dark like yesterday. We reached out to Ron Kim's office, who did respond, but they wanted to know who else was going to be on the live cast, and then it kind of went dark from there. We didn't get back.
Like I said, right now we're building up our political clout. So, this is, like I said, the first time out, you do the best you can. Then, if someone,
who are you?
Exactly. Well, listen, maybe the person that we either endorse or we lean on, or however you want to say it, maybe if they get elected, then more people will be like, oh, I should do that interview next time.
We reached out to Benjamin Yee's office. Benjamin Yee responded. We got an interview with him.
Very good. Very good.
I went onto the site for Manny Alessandro. They didn't actually have a contact information on his site, so I could find out how to reach him. So we weren't able to even.
That is unusual.
Reached out to Nomi Kant's office. We got a reply from them, but then it went dark. We weren't able to hear back from them.
Okay.
We reached out to David Eisenbach's office, who was supposed to set an interview. That got rescheduled at least, I think it was 3 times.
Yeah, I know you were. I know you were going back and forth with him for it was kind of like a thing.
But after the 3rd time, I wasn't able to get back in contact, and it went dark. We reached out to Jared Rich's office. I believe we had no response from him.
I wonder how many people are really aware that there were this many people actually running.
No, but
I mean, I've heard of most of these people. I'm not gonna, but I have not heard. There's some of them on the list that are a little, newsworthy to me.
We reached out to Anthony Tony Herbert's office, which we had a schedule and set meeting. He was one of actually the first meetings, but then for some reason, I think this was the day of the interview, and we weren't able to reach back out to him. I hope everything's okay, because I haven't heard back from his office at all, and he was one of the most contact with us. And there was another candidate, Halal Sheikh, and we weren't able to get information on his office on how to contact him either. So that gives a rundown of who we tried to reach out to and what the responses were. So from the people that we did get, I'm sorry, there are more candidates. We reached out and we were able to interview Rafael Espinal, who did give a very good interview as well. Unfortunately, corrupted in the computer.
Oh boy.
We were unable to redo that interview in time. So what we're going to do is, after this broadcast, I'm still going to definitely try to get it up tonight. He's really sending the information to try to put on his interview, because he did take the time out to put it through. The interview was a very strong interview.
I was going to say, how would you characterize the interview?
It was good.
Was he knowledgeable of the issues?
Yeah.
Did he seem labor friendly?
Yes, it was one of the better interviews. That was the problem.
Just so you know, we're not leaning on it. We're not putting our thumb on the scale. Our honest opinion.
All right. So what we're going to do is read out the questions to the candidates, and then we're going to just play what their answers were. So right now, we only have the responses from Councilman Rodriguez, who's running for office, and Benjamin Yee, who's also running for public advocate. Okay. So you only get to hear their 2 for now. Later on, you'll be able to hear Mr. Espinal's as we load that up onto the site later tonight. And when we go through this, we want to take a good talk and see if these candidates, after we hear what they have to say, tomorrow is going to be the vote. Is it going to be a day where we can actually maybe get off of work, go march to the circle, and then from there go straight to vote for one candidate all at the same time?
Listen, I'm down. That sounds like a plan to me, and I'm down if you're down.
All right. So also, as you listen to this, I'm going to promote it a couple of times, because one of the biggest things, we are members of Local 3. We've been on strike for almost coming up on 2 years now. The anniversary is in March. So one of the biggest reasons we're trying to push this initiative also, because the elected officials have the real power, I believe, to put stuff in place to help stop strikes, keep strikes from going on, like the problems that's happening down in Hudson Yards, what's going on with us. And I believe besides the political power is economic. One of the biggest things we can do is, if we can put together what we're trying to do with this public option cooperative and have and I definitely want it to be the unions. We have enough people in the unions that we all get together. We can own the actual cable company for the city. We won't only have the political, we'll have the economic power to make sure that whatever we need to get done in the city gets done. So I'm going to say it a couple of times as we go through this. Make sure you go onto unplugspectrum.com and sign up for the petition so we can get as many names as possible. I would love it to be all union names, but as many names as possible so we can start that idea moving forward.
What was that again there?
Unplugspectrum.
Thank you.
.com.
Unplugspectrum.com.